Good evening. As authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, this meeting may be convened into closed executive session for the purposes of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney on any item on the agenda at any time during the meeting. The City of Bastrop reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or called executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. It's 6:30, and I'm calling us to order, and I'm very excited about tonight. On July 28th, I was invited to the Friendship Bible Baptist Church. They had a summer camp going on, and YMCA was helping them with some of their exercises and part of their day, and I met a wonderfully dynamic, great group of kids, and I asked them if they would like to come say the pledges at a city council meeting, and they graciously agreed. So if you will all stand, the kids are going to come forward. You guys can come stand right up here, stand together, and she's going to take your picture. You're fine. Get where she can. There you go. Let Mary take their picture first. Y'all look at Mary. She's going to take your picture, okay? This is two. Okay, now I need you to take 2 big steps forward and turn around, and we're going to do the U.S. flag first, and you guys can use your outside voices so everyone will know that you know the pledges, okay? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for the Texas pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Okay, it's honor the Texas flag. Okay, ready? All right, here we go. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Great job. And if you guys will remain standing, the pastor of that church, Mary Butler, will be leading our invocation tonight. If you'll come to the microphone, everybody will be able to hear you.
If we would please bow our heads while we pray. Most dear and loving Father, we want to first come before you and just say thank you, O God. Thank you for our health. Thank you, O God, for all of the blessings that you have given to us, O Father. We want to now, God, pray for the meeting, O God, for this council that is here today, O Lord. I pray for the mayor of this city, O Lord. I pray for every city official, and I pray right now, O God, for those on this city council, O God. I pray that you will give them wisdom and discernment and the knowledge that they need to guide this city in the direction that it should go, Father. We love you and we thank you. In the name of Jesus, we do pray. Amen. Amen.
Thank you guys very much, very much. Okay, we have a couple of presentations today. If you're following along on the agenda, I'm on 4A. And the first thing I'm going to do is read a proclamation for the Ladies Reading Circle. I was privileged to be at they had a little get-together on Friday celebrating their 120th anniversary, and they have a wonderful display at the museum. And you should make a point of going by and checking it out. The women of Bastrop have been doing great things for a very, very long time, and they are continuing that tradition. So if you take a moment and listen to this proclamation. Whereas Bastrop today stands tall on the shoulders of those who came before us and who had the vision and energy to nurture a strong sense of community and the quality of life we enjoy today. Prominent among our benefactors is the Bastrop Ladies Reading Circle, celebrating its 120th anniversary in September of this year and the subject of a Bastrop County Historical Society Museum exhibit on view from September 9th through the end of the month. Whereas what started out on September 15th, 1897 as the Ladies Magazine Club, the Ladies Reading Circle enjoys the singular distinction of being Texas's oldest reading club in continuous operation, apart from a brief period when all energies and attentions were focused on World War II effort. Whereas the circle has gone well beyond its ongoing focus on literature to tend as well to the needs and interests of the larger community, establishing Bastrop's first lending library in 1900 with a collection of 1,000 books donated by Circle members, sponsoring and planting shrubs and flowers around the county courthouse following its renovation in the early 1920s, serving as caretakers of Fairview Cemetery, and even organizing work parties to clean Gill's Branch, purchasing and developing in the early 1950s Old Ferry Park, Bastrop's first park. Organizing in 1952 the Bastrop County Historical Society to celebrate Bastrop County's remarkable place in the settlement and history of Texas, establishing that same year the Society's Museum at 702 Main Street to preserve and present documents, artifacts, and touchstones to the early history of the Bastrop area. Whereas the Circle continues to grow as a book club and continues its commitment to community life through its members' extensive volunteer service and through its donations to the Bastrop Public Library and other civic interests, appreciation for its substantial legacy to the citizens of Bastrop, and encourages all citizens to visit the museum's new exhibit to learn more about the Ladies Reading Circle and its legacy to the citizens of Bastrop. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the city of Bastrop, Texas, to be affixed this 12th day of September. I would love if Glenda would come forward, and if any of the ladies from the circle are here, if they would also come forward. And let's give them a round of applause. Do you want to say anything?
Yes.
Well, you got them all.
On behalf of the Bastrop Ladies Reading Circle, we want to thank Mayor Schrader and also our members of the City Council and our City Manager. Thank you so much. Yes. And please come to see the exhibit.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, the next proclamation, timing is everything. It is the National Preparedness Month. We've been talking about some preparation lately, and I think across the United States, it's a good time to be prepared. Do you want to present, and then I'll read the proclamation? Is that what we're doing? Mike.
Okay, thank you. You are right. This is great timing. This is National Preparedness Month throughout the United States, and so we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of give a little quick program. You can search the internet, and there's all kinds of programs, there's all kinds of ways of preparing. So I just, instead of wasting a lot of time, I wanted to do a kind of a little bullet shot of it. These are the 4 things that you have to do: know the risk, make a plan, prepare a kit, and practice the plan. Those are the 4 things in order to be prepared for any kind of emergency. The first one is know the risk. Everywhere is different. Of course, in Bastrop, we're going to have the flooding, we'll have fires. Sometimes we don't think about hazmat, train derailment, and also tornadoes. I know tornadoes aren't as big of a deal here, but we can still have that. So you've got to know what your risks are in the specific area where you're at. Make a plan. The thing about making a plan is you never know where you're going to be. You don't know if you're going to be at school. You don't know if you're going to be at home. You don't know if you're going to be at work. And so you've got to make a plan based on where you may be. So you got to have plans for everything and identify responsibilities for each member of the household. I don't have little kids anymore, but what we did is we always had a plan. We always had a meeting place. It's surprising how just a meeting place would go a long ways. When we did we didn't tell anybody what we were doing about a year ago, and we did a fire alarm here at the City Hall. And I was actually shocked to see that everybody knew where to go. They went right out here on a fire alarm. We could do a head count real quick. So you've got to make the plan, and of course the last one is going to be to practice it. But preparing for a disaster, this is a go bag. I'm sorry I chose the wrong font because it makes it a little difficult. Basically, a go bag is whatever you think you may need, and the rule of thumb is a minimum of 72 hours. You can go longer, you can go less, but what you've got to remember is, do you have elderly people that you're taking care of? Okay, there may be medications. Do you have pets? You may have to have dog food or cat food. You know, don't just think little kids, babies, diapers, and stuff like that. Don't just think only of clothes, food, and water. You got to start thinking about a lot of other things. And you could go way far this way, you can go way far that way with your go bag. But my suggestion would be to make sure all your important papers at your house, because you know a lot of us are used to having to do that for the fire and be ready to just grab, you know, your important papers. But something you haven't thought about, what happens if your house burns and you have no identification on you? Well, that could be a problem. And so you should have copies of everything. So there's a lot of different things that you've got to do to be prepared for on a go bag. I just threw a few things. Again, there's hundreds and hundreds of different items, and I won't read them all off to you, but those are just some of the key things that you may need to have. I don't know how many of y'all have ever been stuck. I was stuck for about almost a week without anything at Hurricane Katrina. No food, no water, no shelter, no nothing, and we were just thrown out there. Luckily, I had a go bag. I was taught, you know, to have a go bag, and so we had some stuff. So you never know when that may happen, and just because it may, you know, you think we're not going to have a tornado here, you never know. Nobody thought we were going to have 25 inches of rain 3 weeks ago. Nobody thought Houston would have 50 inches of rain, and it did happen. So we've got to be prepared to some level. These are just different ideas and instructions on how to maintain your kit, because that stuff does go bad. Canned goods do go bad. Water, bottled water does go bad after a certain length of time. So you got to understand all of the different things and how to store it and when to replace everything. This slide talks about home, work, and vehicle. You should always have, you never know when you're going to get trapped in your vehicle. Well, what about, obviously we don't have to worry about the winters here as much, but you know, it still gets kind of cold, 25 degrees. Well, that could cause some problems, so you got to have blankets. So just know your environment, know what time of the year it is. Always be watching for the weather, pay attention. Obviously, we have Facebook. Facebook's probably the best thing that we use now. I also understand that there's a lot of people that don't use Facebook. We have reverse 911. And on everybody's chair and up there, I put a pamphlet. That pamphlet is what we've been talking about for 3+ years, is how to register, what you have to do, the website. We went around the city and put them at different locations. If anybody has any questions, you can call us on how to register. And obviously the last part is practice the plan. Doesn't do any good if you have all these plans in place but you don't practice them, especially with kids. But you know, you got to remember that you may not have cell service. So what if your kids are at school and you're at home? You got to know what you're going to do. You got to talk to your kids beforehand. This again is the slide on the Warren Central Texas. I've shown it before. This just shows how to register once you get into it. I'm not going to really go over it because it's just self-explanatory. Once you go to the COG site, the CAT COG, Homeland Security on the left, click on it, and it's going to say register here. You click on register here, and it'll walk you right through. Remember, one thing you have to remember that we've had some issues with, if you click text and text only, you're only going to get 160 characters. So therefore, even the most important dangerous warnings that we have, if you only do text, you're only going to get 160 characters of that warning. We are trying to be cognizant of that. We're trying to craft our warnings for that, but I don't suggest just clicking that. I think you really do need to receive the phone call too on emergencies, because there's some things that 160 is just not enough, but you at least got to remember that. And then just how to finish it out. Does anybody have any questions?
Steve, you had mentioned one of the last times that, for instance, if there's people whose family lives out of state, they can also register for this so that they would be getting the warnings as well, right? So folks could use that if they have parents that live somewhere else.
Yes, ma'am. The way this works is when you enter your information, you can enter your own name. It's all about that address. It's where you put that address. So if you live in California and your mom lives out in the county or in the city, wherever, when you make sure you put her address inside the city or in the county, and when the system goes off, it checks that address. So it doesn't matter where you truly live, it's what address you put in there. So it's actually really good for elderly people that have their kids living somewhere else. Chances are, if the system goes off in the county, it's going to go off in the city too. Not always, but chances are pretty good it's going to. Any other questions?
Council, any questions? Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. All right, so in honor of National Preparedness Month, whereas National Preparedness Month is a nationwide effort held each September, and whereas the goal of National Preparedness Month is to increase public awareness about the importance of preparing for emergencies and to encourage individuals to take action, and whereas the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, through its READY campaign and Citizens Corps program, works with a wide variety of organizations, including local, state, and federal government agencies and the private sector, to highlight the importance of emergency preparedness and to promote individual involvement through events and activities across the nation. And whereas all Americans need to take some simple steps to prepare for emergencies, including get an emergency supply kit, making a family emergency plan, being informed about different threats, and getting involved in preparing their communities. And whereas the natural, man-made, and technological emergencies and disasters witnessed nationwide in 2017 illustrate the potential devastation to communities and highlights the importance of preparing disaster response and sheltering operations. Now, therefore, I, Connie Schrader, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2017 as National Preparedness Month. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the city of Bastrop to be affixed this 12th day of September 2017. If you don't have a plan, get a plan. Make sure your kids know what your plans are. We have seen the impact, and it's important to take the steps that you can do now that will make such a big difference later. And along those lines, we will move to our next item on the agenda, which is a presentation from Commissioner Mel Hamner. If you'd like to come forward.
Mayor, City Manager, Council people, thanks for having me here. I didn't do a presentation because I'm going to speak from my heart and talk about preparation. Just last month I was here talking about the interlocal agreement between us. Get in front of that, I'm not loud enough already. Okay. But at any rate, you know, we were prepared. We had an interlocal agreement, and I'm here to express my sincere thanks and gratitude for that intercooperation that we had during Harvey. You know, the city allowed the county to actually work out of your police department to run the emergency operating center. I saw a lot of professionalism. Your public works, Trey Job and the crowd worked hand in hand with my team. We actually prevented flooding over on 304 for the residents that have habitually flooded the last two floods. But by the quick action of your team and our team, we managed to divert that water and get it to flow past those houses before it got into those houses. And I drove Hunter's Crossing too, Lyle, so I know you guys didn't suffer any flooding. I'll tell you that Unit 3 in Tahitian, which floods a lot, we only had a couple of houses out of the 30-something that normally flood. So we work together, and that's the way we want to go forward. I want to continue to see that, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your cooperation.
Okay, we're on item 4D, and the city manager is going to, I think you kids will like this. There's a lot of pictures, it's pretty cool stuff. She's going to talk about how we all survived Hurricane Harvey.
Well, the great thing about hurricanes is we know in plenty of time that they're coming. What we don't know is where they're going to hit. So I always like to start with the end in mind. So Sunday or Saturday night into Sunday morning of Hurricane Harvey, we got intense rain. It rained sideways, and I'm sure that you experienced some interesting drips and dribbles at your house, depending on which way the wind blew, and it would quickly stop. But Sunday morning, Trey Job and I were able to get out and ride around, and I'm going to go through some pictures fairly quickly, recognizing that we had time for some water to drain off, but this is the Riverwood low water crossing, Piney Creek at the north city limits, our detention pond at the Public Works, and at about 4:15 in the morning, that was just about ready to overflow its banks, so we appreciate Mother Nature cooperating with us. This was the detention pond at Bob Bryant, and clearly it was doing what it was intended to do. This is an example of a tree falling at Fisherman's Park, and only in Texas can the day before you be in a drought and a burn ban and then get 19 inches of rain and the trees uproot, but that's a byproduct of a drought and Hurricane Harvey. The Colorado River rose and was very close to overtaking our tennis courts. You can see in the picture kind of off in the background, this is the detention pond at Burleson Crossing. And the debris line is fairly high, so we were maxing out about 4:15 that Sunday morning with all of the detention that we had. Fisherman's Park again, this is a picture of the Colorado River. Our water wells were almost underwater. The wells themselves were underwater, but the fence marking their location was just about under. The boat ramps clearly were underwater. And you can see the high water mark in one of the detention ponds in Hunter's Crossing that the commissioner was talking about. Some evasive action was necessary to keep those within the banks. And this is Covert Chevrolet. A lot of water still that Sunday morning when we were riding around. Around Shiloh Road and 304, the action that Commissioner Hamner talked about was we have a resident in the county that gave us permission to remove the culverts in his driveway to open up the flow in that area, and we were literally minutes away from taking out Shiloh Road. We've made an agreement with the commissioner that under certain conditions we would just take the road out so that it would continue to flow. And we were just about at the point to do that when, again, Mother Nature cooperated and stopped raining. And then we had a downed tree at Willow at the Fisherman's Park entrance. And so this kind of begins to tell the story. Saturday, about 5 o'clock, when the National Weather Service gave us weather briefings in a hurricane situation like this, they do it 2 or 3 times a day. At 5:05, we didn't even make the list, and we were all wondering if this was going to be much to do about nothing. We had, and I'm going to talk about this, we had activated our Emergency Operations Center at 9 o'clock on Friday night, and here it is, 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and we're prepared, and Mother Nature has not given us any rain. So we weren't on the list and thinking, well, maybe we've dodged a bullet. Well, you can see by 10:51 that evening, we had gone from not making the list to having about 9.5 inches. 10:30 Sunday morning, we had gotten 16.3 inches. And by the close of business for us that Sunday night, in that 2-day period of time, we had gotten over 19 inches of rain. Back in June, Wesley Brandon, our engineer, had prepared a chart that kind of marked all of the floods. And you can see on this side of the chart all of the floods that we got significant rain in a very short period of time. And those were floods where you saw flooding because our infrastructure is not built to handle that type of rain that quickly. Fortunately for us, Hurricane Harvey was steady rain. Yes, there were times when we got a lot of rain, but over the 50 hours, we got 19.1 inches of rain, and in this period of time, our facilities were able to keep up. And that's what you want, is well-maintained facilities that actually keep up. So one of the things that I want to reiterate is we didn't start preparing for Hurricane Harvey a week before Hurricane Harvey. The city actually started preparing after the May 2016 flood. And Trey has talked about this on numerous occasions. We upsized existing drainage culverts about 400 feet. We regraded a number of ditches. This particular picture is Fayette Street, where Public Works went in with the grade awl and dug out that ditch. We installed more than 10 area inlets, and we did quite a bit of cleaning and removing of debris. An example of that is 102 Piney Ridge Road. That was an infrastructure that our crews consistently checked over several days, and it did exactly what it was designed to do. It worked. That resident didn't see any water. We were experiencing quite a bit of water on Laurel and Water Street, so staff went in and made sure that the grades of the ditch line were appropriate so that they could actually get to the inlets, and guess what? They worked. Just like Walnut and Water Street, and Walnut and Main Street. Walnut and Main Street, they actually installed some pipe to an inlet, and in all instances, the infrastructure that staff put in post-2016 flood actually performed the way it was intended. Gills Branch, south of State Highway 71, quite a bit of improvement and capacity was made at the turn at Gills Branch, and again, that system worked as well. Hunter's Crossing, lots of work was done to clean out the drains. There were concrete in some, and there, I didn't put the pre-pictures, but this inlet was really clogged up. And so staff went in, dug it out, cleaned it out so that the water could actually function in that inlet. And then this is an example of debris, trash that just collects in the storm drain, and they've gone in and cleaned those out as well. It clearly worked because, as the commissioner said, there was no water in any houses in Hunter's Crossing. We started preparing for this storm season back in June. There was quite a bit of work conducted along Gills Branch, if you'll remember. In preparation of 2 tropical storms that were in the Gulf at that time, went out and worked on Gills Branch. That's a picture of our great awl again, and went in and cleaned out Gills Branch there at Pine Street, and then this is along the banks at the Schulman Theater. In addition to drainage, there's quite a bit of other preparation that occurs in a city. Each department evaluates the risk and puts together things that ensures our success. In the case of the library, they updated their emergency contact list. We contacted the First United Methodist Church because until we get our FEMA building built, the First United Methodist Church acts as our primary shelter. So Mickey contacted the pastor of the church and indicated that we might need to activate that shelter, which we did. They inventoried the Red Cross kit and purchased some shelter supplies in addition to that. We offered sandbags to our citizens and neighbors. We bought 3,000 sandbags, 48 yards of sand, and we helped 63 customers. And we didn't say if you didn't live in Bastrop, we weren't going to help you. We recognized that for some people that this really is important, and in some instances you really need to feel like you're doing something. So we made that available, and in all of the highlighted areas, we sorted the folks that signed up by their area, so we knew exactly what parts of the county or the city we were helping. In addition to that, our water wastewater crews went out and they sealed the wells to prevent water intrusion, and these are the wells that you saw underwater, and so they were out there sealing it, recognizing that it was likely to go underwater. They also plugged our septic receiving stations to prevent inflow and infiltration. And that's important because that's extra water that we have to treat in our system if storm water gets in during the time of a storm. And then in addition, they cleaned our drying beds, recognizing that we would probably get a lot of inflow and infiltration, and that gave us extra capacity to process the sewer that would likely come. We activated our Unified Emergency Operations Center with Bastrop County, and we did that at the police department Friday, August 25th at 9 o'clock. We ended up closing our EOC at Monday, August 28th, 2017 at 4 o'clock. And it's important for you to appreciate that it was staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with personnel from the city of Bastrop, Bastrop County, Texas Department of Public Safety, the County Sheriff's Office, Smithfield Police and Fire, Elgin Police and Fire, our ESD number 1, ESD number 2, LCRA Rangers, the Texas Parks and Wildlife, Bastrop Long-Term Recovery Team, Judge Poppy, and our 4 county commissioners. We're all a part of that process at some point in time during the day, 24 hours a day, from its activation to the time we stand it down. Chief Adcock acted as our incident commander on the night shift. Chief Altgelt and Andreas Rosales were our operations chief both day and night. Sarah O'Brien acted as the city's public information officer. The county had a public information officer that worked during the day. Sarah took the night shift. And Chief Wambus was in charge of our fire operations chief. Public Works and BP&L, Trey Job and Curtis Irwin did not go home, along with a number of their crews. They staffed a 12-hour shift, 24 hours a day, so we were responding to calls. We took an opportunity to go and knock on doors of some of our residents that frequently have problems just to make sure that they knew we were there and did they need something. Mayor Schrader was involved as our emergency management director. As I indicated, the library staff opened our shelter at the First United Methodist Church, and in addition to our library staff, Tanya Cantrell and Tracy Waldron participated kind of as support to the library team. As you can imagine, we're getting a lot of information throughout the day, so we made sure council was updated, because really in a situation like this, the best gift you can give your first responders is to stay home, stay off the street, and don't go out and look and be the next thing we need to respond to. So that was kind of our message to council. Let us take the pictures, let us send you the information and keep you informed. So if you had questions and called them, they were able to answer them as well. And then we also held daily press conferences that were televised online as well as through the media. Thanks to Corporal Tank, who is a citizen here in Bastrop in the Austin Police Department, the mayor and I were able to go up on Monday and take some aerial perspective of the city of Bastrop and Bastrop County. It was extremely helpful. This happens to be the wide spot in the river across from the park. This is obviously the old iron bridge, and I'm looking back toward the north at this point. This is the southern part of Tahitian Village as the railroad track crosses there. This you can't see very well, but the Colorado River got up close to some of the houses in Tahitian Village and actually took out part of Riverside Drive, which is right here. This is of interest because the LCRA contacted us in the early, well, not really early, but in the late evening on Saturday night, and indicated that they would begin to do some controlled release of water because the Lake Bastrop was filling up pretty quickly. And so between rainstorms, they were trying to manage the flow of their asset as well, so we didn't have anything catastrophic. And then this right here is the detention pond at the Public Works facility. And the great thing about that is it did exactly what it needed to do. It filled up and then it drained off at a flow that our infrastructure could handle. And so at the end of the day, we can say to you that there was no water in any houses. From a street and drainage standpoint, we had 12 down trees. From the Parks Department, we did have some damage to our river walk and 8 downed trees. And I want to brag on BPNL. I've been doing this a very long time. And there is a story about a man who sleeps in a storm. And the story goes something like this, that there was an old farmer that lived in the Northeast, and he had trouble keeping farmhands, because if you've ever been through a nor'easter, it's a tough place to be, and nobody wants to work. And so he'd gone through a lot of staff, and he had this older gentleman come through, kind of a small, lanky fella. Didn't look like he was very strong, and the farmer was reluctant to hire him, and he said, "How do you feel about working in a nor'easter?" And the man's response to that was, "I always sleep in a storm." The farmer didn't really understand what that was about, but he said, "Okay." So the first time a nor'easter came in, he runs to the barn in the middle of the night. He wakes that older man up and says, "We've got a nor'easter." And the old man said, "I told you I always sleep in a storm." And the farmer wanted to fire him, but he goes out, and come to find out all the animals are in the barn. And all the shutters are closed, and all the hay is covered. And everything that's a problem was already taken care of, because you see, that old man took care of what he needed to, because he always slept in a storm. Well, Mr. Irwin runs BPNL like Hurricane Harvey's coming every day. And he trims weekly, he tends to his inventory, he doesn't let his work orders back up, and I would be willing to bet there is another power company in the area that can tell you during all of that they only had 10 outages affecting 29 customers. The proof of preparedness is in the pudding in the way Mr. Irwin runs our system. And so what they have done post that is tree trimming, straightening, and leaning poles, low lines, and repairing lights. And he's got a first-class crew that does great things just like the rest of our crew. So it wouldn't be an appropriate emergency if we didn't debrief as a city and look for opportunities for improvement. So we've identified several work plan items for fiscal year 2018. We are developing protocols for citizen notification and evacuations, because we know at what point our infrastructure is going to have issues, and we want to give you as a citizen as much time as possible to begin to plan for that. We're going to develop a preparedness checklist by alert levels, so if we have a lot of notice like a hurricane, we know at what level we need to be doing things. We've identified employees to provide some additional depth in our organization, and we're going to do some FEMA training, not only online, but we're going to invite some trainers to Bastrop. We're going to do quarterly tabletop exercises anticipating different emergencies, because as Chief Adcock indicated, it's not just fires, it's not just floods. It could be a train derailment in the middle of town. It could be a tanker out on 71. We're going to develop press release templates and code red notifications. Those are things that we can anticipate in a fire, what you would need to know, in a flood, what you would need to know, and we can have most of that written and then just fill in the pertinent information. We've identified some additional equipment and supplies that we really need to have should we be isolated because 71 is flooded at both ends, or maybe help can't get to us. And we need some establish some contracts for various things, including fuel. So that was our takeaway from this, and at the end of the day, this was exceptionally great teamwork, and I want to thank everyone who helped us prepare for Harvey, and hope that you will join with me in saying great job to our team.
And yes, you guys did great, and you can go. It's been a long 30-minute.
Mayor, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Council, do you have any questions or comments?
No, Mayor, I don't have any questions, but I think the chief brought it to our attention, but I just want to expand on it. Just want to caution everybody and to not go home with your fuel tank on red. have your tanks prepared to go because you might have to go quickly. So make sure you keep your vehicles at least half full. That's all I've got.
Councilmember Ennis?
Mayor and Ms. Humble, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be having a series of workshops, not really workshops, but hearings.
Well, I was going to speak to that.
Okay, I'll let you talk.
Our last council meeting seems like 3 years ago. You might recall it was August 26th, and I was talking about it's dry out there, it's summer, we had roadside fires started, be careful. I did not know 72 hours later we were going to be doing flood preparation. And so some of the items that we discussed, we weren't really planning on spending 3 days in the EOC, and we've had quite a few things going on, and so we will indeed have those public meetings for the drainage fee, but they're just going to push out a few weeks to make up for the incidents that we've had. Do you want to add anything, Linda?
Yes, ma'am, and all of that is a great point. One of the things that we can do well is drainage improvements. What we can't do is anything else. So if we are upkeeping drainage, then that means we're not taking care of streets or parks. And so what I would like the takeaway from this to be is that great maintenance works. Good design meets good maintenance, and things work the way it is. So this is proof for our drainage maintenance plan. And the underlying story to that is if you would like us to work on streets and parks too, then we really do need to work on a drainage fee so we can hire some additional people to do that. But to the mayor's point, we had that scheduled at the end of the month, but just due to our limited capacity and our ability to do one thing well, we're going to have to postpone those, and we'll be back in the community in the middle of October to do exactly what we said, and that's educate you on the whys and give you an opportunity to engage with us about that.
I'm sorry, Bill, did you have anything else?
No, I was just giving the segue into what you've all already done.
Do you have anything? Okay. All right. Well, we are, thank you very, very much. And staff, I'd like to extend my thanks as well. I've spent a number of hours in that room, but not nearly as many hours as some of you did, and your work is just very much appreciated. As the city manager was saying, several people have asked me about how did things go with Harvey, and as a civil engineer, when really good design meets really good maintenance and everything works like it should, it's an artistry to me. It makes me very, very happy, and I know that's nerdy and I don't care. So there are some things that have changed since we last met, and one of them is on September 1st, it became illegal to text and drive in the state of Texas. So I know all of you are fine and upstanding citizens and would never be texting while you're driving, but just in case you should think about it, know that you are breaking the law. That is all across the state. Please don't do that, and staff, you are included in that law. The city manager made a comment, and she showed you a couple pictures about some of the damage that we had on the Riverwalk. We really did have damage. It really does need to be fixed. There's a cattle guard at the top of the stairs at Ferry Park, and there's a cattle guard if Pine Street went all the way to the river. There's a cattle guard there as well, and whoever the well-meaning citizen was that moved the cattle guard and the people that have been running and pushing strollers and doing things along the Riverwalk, that's a really bad idea, and you will, I'm sure it got done today. The cattle guard is back, it is posted, it is closed, it is damaged. Please don't use that part of the Riverwalk. That would be greatly appreciated. When you have rain and you have the hurricane, the next thing that you have is mosquitoes. And I've had a couple people ask me, are we going to do anything about mosquitoes? And of course we are, because that's a part of our preparedness plan. And at midnight on the 14th, which is Thursday night, to 5 a.m., the whole city of Bastrop will be fogged for mosquitoes. So as I was telling my grandchildren this afternoon, you'll be asleep, and that's a good thing. Even though some of us may have actually held on to the mosquito truck when we were little and rode our bikes, it's not a real good idea to be out while they're spraying. But it is coming. They do it at a specific time for it to do the most amount of good, but be aware that that's happening. That being said, if you allow water to stand in your yard, it's a mosquito breeding site. So do the basics to make sure that you are not letting mosquitoes grow around your house. It's a good idea to wear long sleeves. It's a good idea to have insect repellent, all that common sense kind of stuff. But I did want you to know that the city would be addressing the mosquitoes. My minute with the mayor is going to be 30 seconds, and it's a reminder to everyone of the following things. We are able to have this meeting because we have a quorum. We have 5 council members and a mayor. That's 6 people. 4 people make a quorum. I, as mayor, do not vote. So there's 4 people. We need a majority, and there's 3 people who are allowed to vote. So every item that we discuss tonight will have to be voted affirmatively by all 3 council members, or it won't carry. It takes 3 elected officials to move business forward in this government. That's how it works. I had someone ask me one time, well, that means one person can derail everything? And I said, well, I look at it as it means 2 people can't run everything. Doesn't matter if we have 6 people sitting on the dais or 4 people sitting on the dais. It takes 3 elected officials to agree for something to be approved. So just a little civics lesson in case anyone should be interested. The library folks left, but I wanted to thank them and also thank Chief Adcock and Chief Altgeld and both Colin and Andreas. Some of you may not be aware that we hosted Rockport. The city of Rockport, their city staff was at the library at the conference room. They came in on Thursday afternoon, a little frantic, and when their city, which you know that's exactly where Harvey hit, when their citizens were calling and needing help, the phone was ringing at our library, and they were able to give them information and take care of things. They're our sister city. We were happy to host them, and they stayed. They packed up on Friday. A few of them lost their homes. They were very, very happy. They were very well received, and some of you may have met them while they were here in town, but I wanted to let you know that that was something else that we did as a part of Harvey. That being said, just a few quick little things. We've had several ribbon cuttings. If you haven't been to Sortino's Coffee, they have wonderful paninis. That's a new coffee house in town, and some people are very much addicted to coffee. I am not one of those people, but I do like their paninis. We celebrated the ribbon cutting for the 602 on Main. They had their grand opening on First Friday, September 1st, and we also celebrated the 5-year anniversary for Lost Pines Art Bazaar. Mr. Kirkpatrick and the city manager and I have been going around and visiting some of our retail folks that we've got in town. You guys are growing accustomed to hearing that the majority of our income for our budget is sales tax as opposed to property tax. And so we always want to share the love with the folks in the community that are helping collect sales tax and support the businesses. And we were very well received and have had some great meetings with them. We went to the chamber luncheon last Wednesday, and I think it was a record setting. I don't see Becky back there, but I think we were right at 200 people. And if you are not a member of the chamber, I'd encourage you to do that. It's a great place to go and meet and network with folks. Last Wednesday night, we had a little party for Deborah Johnson. She was had been the director, the chair of the BAIPP board, and she is no longer going to be on the board. And we had a celebration to thank her for the many, many things that she's done for this community. You can't drive through town without seeing something that Deborah did as a part of that BAIPP board. And I see her husband here tonight, and I don't see her, but if you would please, Glenn, tell Deborah just how very much we appreciate her. I got called to a meeting in Richmond last Thursday and got an opportunity to meet Governor Abbott and John Sharp and spent some time with them. They are real interested in doing anything they can to help all of the communities that were impacted by Harvey. And one of the most interesting things we've done lately was we went to the MD Anderson facility that's out by Camp Swift, and I was mesmerized, and Dr. Aby is a phenomenal guy, and I was almost a biomedical engineer, but I ended up going into civil engineer, but I could have listened to him talk forever and ever. They are the world expert on developing animal tests. They are, he kept talking about GLP, and I finally just said, okay, I didn't get, what does GLP stand for? And it was like good laboratory practices, and it was like I could have probably come up with that one, but they have the only baboons in the world that have specific pathogen-free, where all of us have different viruses, and you can get an illness and that virus can kick up and you're carrying it, but it may lay dormant. And so when they're doing testing on the baboons, they can't ever give them something that a dormant virus in the baboon would be activated. They need to know any side effects, that it's the medicine itself that has done it. Fascinating stuff to me. They're the only place in the world, not in the United States, in the world that have that. So it ended up that one of the things that they could use some help with is having conventions, and we said that we would be able to help them out with that. And if Sarah hasn't already met with them, I'm sure she's got the meeting scheduled. So we're just thrilled to have them as neighbors. Coming up, and Sean may visit about this, we've got a coffee chat coming up. The BDC meeting is next Monday if you're interested in their stuff. And we have a really neat event coming up on September 23rd. Mr. Ennis, I was going to let you, did you plan to visit about that? Okay, I will skip that one. And we have a special executive session on September 26th. That's on the city calendar. So those of you that like to keep up with what we're doing, that is what we're doing. Mr. Brandon, I don't see any steering committee, do you? Oh, there's Samai. Yay. Okay, one of the neat things that we got to do was the American Planning Association. Oh, and Debbie, that was not being very wise about this. The American Planning Association, every year they look at comprehensive plans, and the Central Texas section, Bastrop, was recognized as the outstanding comprehensive plan. And that means that that plan is now going to the state level and will be considered at the state level. But Wesley, if you and Debbie and Samai and anyone else that's here that I overlooked that participated in the comprehensive plan, if you'd come forward, I would really like for you guys to get a round of applause, and you can take a look at the trophy that we got. So thank you guys so much for all your And yes, I was the chair of the steering committee, and just like, get in the picture. Okay, Councilmember Peterson, do you have anything to report tonight?
Yes, Mayor, just briefly. I just want to say all of our hearts and prayers go out to the victims of Harvey and Irma, and hopefully these people get their lives back on track as soon as possible. And with that, I would like to remind everyone to continue to remember 9/11. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Nelson?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't get to see the governor or any baboons, but I was able to attend the Parks Board and Public Tree Advisory meeting. I'm sorry. It was there. And this group was outstanding. They are enthusiastic, informed, and engaged, and I see a lot of good things coming from that advisory group, and I just wanted to make mention of that. Thank you.
Just not even going to comment. Councilmember Ennis?
On September the 23rd, I've mentioned this before at a council meeting, but this is the last council meeting before this event. We're going to celebrate a milestone in Texas history, if not the country's history, when a federal judge ruled that Mexican-American children could attend, at the time, Anglo schools. It has affected the lives of millions of Texans, and on the 23rd at the Convention Center at 10 o'clock, we will be celebrating this event. We will be installing a historical marker at the site of the Mina Ward School, which was the Mexican-American school, and we will also be rolling out the design of Delgado Park, which is the new park that the city is building in the north end of Bastrop in commemoration of this event. I hope you will all come. It's open to the general public, and it's going to be a wonderful celebration. Thank you, Mayor.
I want to publicly thank Bill for all of the work that he's put into doing it. Those kind of events don't just accidentally happen, and he has spent hours and hours, and I know he's gotten some assistance from Sarah O'Brien, but Councilmember Ennis, thank you so much for taking the lead on this. City Manager. Jeez. All right. Madam Secretary, do we have anybody signed up for citizen comments?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. There's only one item. Is it all right with everyone if that stays on the consent agenda? Madam Secretary, if you'll read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 8A. Consider action to approve minutes from the August 14th, 2017, August 15th, 2017, and August 22nd, 2017 meetings. This concludes the consent agenda.
I'll take a motion.
Move. So move. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
All righty, we're on the bottom of page 2. I'm on 9A. Consider action to approve resolution number 2017-73 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, authorizing an advanced funding agreement between the City of Bastrop and the State of Texas regarding the State Park Trail Project, authorizing the city manager to execute said agreement and establishing an effective date. Mr. Brandon.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yes, this advanced funding agreement has to do with our upcoming State Park Trail project that's currently going through the review process. We just received 14 responses from the request for qualifications that we sent out earlier last month, and those are under review, and they're scheduled to go to City Council next month for a recommendation on selecting the design consultant. Part of this grant program, since it's federally funded, means that the funds that actually go to help pay for the project are routed through TxDOT, and TxDOT's considered the project manager. And so we work through TxDOT, who's working through the federal government to handle the reimbursements and the funding of the project. As part of that work, the TxDOT requires what's called an advanced funding agreement, which is just an agreement that defines the responsibilities of each side as the project progresses. And it also defines the requirements that need to be included in the contract documents and the design documents. As part of TxDOT being the manager of the project, there are costs related to that, and TxDOT asks that the cities that participate in these types of projects help fund some of those costs. And so this agreement speaks to those costs and when those payments are due, and the advanced funding agreement must be executed by the city so that we can continue to move forward with the trail project. Just to recap, we were awarded the grant back in 2014. That grant covers up to 80% of the construction cost of the trail. The city's responsible for the remaining 20% of the construction cost, as well as the design cost for the project, and also any environmental costs that are required to support the trail. And so this, with those amounts, our match for the construction cost is roughly $260,000, which is currently anticipated to be funded in our fiscal year 19 budget. Are there any questions?
One question. Do we have to have the FAs into effect before the Transportation Commission acts upon that to ensure that the funding is available?
The funding is available now. The advanced funding agreement is required in order to allow TxDOT the ability to begin helping us manage the project. And so it's set up to where the first payment and the first action that's taken as part of the agreement is before, upon actually executing the agreement. The next side isn't due until construction is actually started.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I have a question, Mr. Brandon. And maybe city manager can answer this as well. The $160,000 for design is coming out of the enterprise fund?
No, it's currently under in our professional services budget in the planning department. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Peterson, too. Are there any other questions for?
No, ma'am. That's not correct. We funded it in the Innovations Fund. The money that he had funded this year in his budget went to pay for Bureau Veritas because we did not approve the building inspection funds in the fall to cover the anticipated overage. So we have refunded the payment of that in the Innovation Fund in 2018. And please nod, Tracy Waldron, if I got that right. Yes, I did.
Sorry about that. That's where it was before. And
I got the name of it wrong, but that's the fund I was talking about.
Any other questions for Mr. Brandon? Happy to take a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve the resolution number 2017-73, authorizing city manager to execute advanced funds in agreement with the city of Bastrop and the state of Texas.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Brandon. Okay, we're now turning the page. We're on the top of at item number 9B. Consider action to approve resolution number 2017-74 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving a destination and marketing services agreement between the City of Bastrop, Texas and Visit Bastrop, attached as Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation and establishing an effective date. Good evening, Ms. O'Brien.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excited to be here this evening. I'm going to go over a little bit of a status update on Visit Bastrop before we talk about the contract for you guys, but I do want to ask, I know that their board chair, their treasurer, and several of their other board members are in attendance, so if you guys don't mind standing to be recognized. Thank you. These folks have been working really hard over the last few months. Just as a reminder to you guys in the public, Visit Bastrop is a 501c6 Texas not-for-profit corporation. They have a set of bylaws. They've got a fully seated board of directors that represents a broad industry sector from the hospitality and tourism industry. They've also adopted financial policies, travel policies, investment policies, you name it, they are ready to go. They currently have several posted positions with an emphasis on sales and marketing. The board has developed several working committees committees, including a finance committee and a marketing committee. They've been forging relationships with the Hyatt area hoteliers, our arts group, meeting venues, historic interests, downtown partners, nature tourism assets, and other industry groups. They're gearing up to make a large marketing push this fall for the annual Veterans Day Car Show and Lost Pines Christmas Festival. They've been transitioning website content from multiple sources to visit Bastrop.com, which they hope to launch in mid-November. They have a full-day strategic planning workshop scheduled for October, and the next piece for Visit Bastrop to continue to move forward is a consideration of the management agreement before you tonight. Pending tonight's decision, the Visit Bastrop Board of Directors will meet on Thursday morning to accept or deny the contract. Funding would be available, according to Tracy Waldron, by September 15th, and at that time, Dale Lockett, who's been on the ground since March, will cease being a contractor of the city and will become a full-time employee of Visit Bastrop. Just so you know, the contract was reviewed by Norton, Rose, and Fulbright, Ms. Lauren Ferrero, who the council authorized Visit Bastrop to hire last spring, as well as, and I hope I get this right, Denton, Navarro, Rocha, Burnell, and Charlie Zeck on behalf of the city of Nacogdoches. The proposed agreement does contain a transition plan, which allocates a lump sum of $520,000 for Visit Bastrop to hit the ground running. We're also targeting 50% of hot revenue, and as I said many times to many of our users of hotel occupancy tax, the fund should be seen as an investment. The more success that Visit Bastrop has putting heads in beds, the more revenues will be generated for both the city and Visit Bastrop in future years. As you are well aware, Visit Bastrop's purpose was established at the April 4th Joint Council Workshop. The non-negotiables developed during that workshop have all been addressed in the proposed agreement and were included in your staff reports. I do want to take a moment to make some comparisons between the Bastrop Marketing Corporation agreement and the proposed agreement with Visit Bastrop that will highlight the very different nature in which Visit Bastrop was intended to operate as a partner organization and marketing arm of the city with a high level of accountability and communication to council. Visit Bastrop is a 501c6 organization. BMC was a Texas limited partnership. The relationship with Visit Bastrop is seen as a community partner. BMC was listed as an independent contractor. Visit Bastrop will adhere to all Texas Open Meeting Act rules and regulations. That was not required of the Bastrop Marketing Corporation. The Visit Bastrop proposed management agreement has a 5-year term limit. The Bastrop Marketing Corporation agreement was 10 years. Staffing levels, Visit Bastrop intends to have 4 to 6 staff on the ground in the next few months. The Bastrop Marketing Corporation retained a marketing consultant over the terms of that agreement. Clauses and assignments, everything in this management agreement reverts back to the city if for whatever reason Visit Bastrop ceases to exist. As we are all well aware, the Bastrop Marketing Corporation agreement could be reassigned as it did when the Hyatt sold from Woodbine. Reporting, the Bastrop Marketing Corporation provided an annual report. This management agreement requires both monthly written and verbal reports, as well as an annual presentation to council of their business plan. Consensus building was not included in the Bastrop Marketing Corporation agreement. This agreement requires that you, the council, host a joint workshop with the Visit Bastrop Board of Directors every June so that consensus can be had. The Visit Bastrop Board of Directors had broad-based local representation. That was not addressed in the Bastrop Marketing Corporation agreement. Audits were addressed in both agreements, but are a requirement in the current proposed management agreement and were not required with the Bastrop Marketing Corporation. We are also looking at requiring Visit Bastrop to aim to get accreditation as a Destination Marketing Association International. That was not addressed in the previous agreement. As far as funding levels go, we're looking at 50% of hotel occupancy tax receipt totals for Visit Bastrop. The Bastrop Marketing Corporation started at 75% in its first year of receipts for the Hyatt only and ended at 43% in year 10. Physical and financial property will all revert back to the city if Visit Bastrop fails to exist. That was not addressed at all in the Bastrop Marketing Corporation agreement, as neither was intellectual property. Both of those items are addressed in the current Visit Bastrop agreement. Just a little side note, visitlostpines.com is currently owned by a private individual and no one else, so we don't actually have access to that since that was not addressed in the original agreement. I think staff feels really strongly that this management agreement is sound and does protect the city's best interests while giving Visit Bastrop the independence they need to best represent our community in the ever-changing, fast-paced destination marketing field. Recent events around the country and state highlight the importance of having a unified voice rolling out the welcome mat for visitors to our community. I cannot stress enough that this agreement was developed to require a level of accountability and control for Visit Bastrop to both the City Council, city staff, our tourism partners, and most importantly, our citizens. We are insisting that Visit Bastrop become the brand advocate for our community to continue to attract tourism, leverage our assets, and generate much-needed additional sales tax for our coffers. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you guys have on the contract.
Great job, Ms. O'Brien. Any comments, any questions, Council? Councilmember Ennis, are you about to ask a question?
If it's time for me to make an announcement that I spoke with the city manager this morning regarding the contract and enumerated a couple of small changes, and I believe she has given us an updated version of that, and I can go over those changes if you want me to.
I don't think we have to, as long as you're happy with the draft.
I'm happy.
Is that, do you guys want to go over the, okay.
And I do want to reiterate, they are not substantive. They don't change the intent, but he caught some things that offered clarity and consistency and were very good catches.
I'll take a motion.
Comment first.
Let's do a motion and a second, and then we can discuss.
I make the motion that we move on to authorize, I'm sorry, you caught me off guard.
We're on 9B.
I know.
Okay.
I move that we consider action to approve resolution R2017-74.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Now, we'd love to have discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
Just a correction and a clarification, Ms. O'Brien.
Yes, sir.
Relative to the legal firm that reviewed the contract, would you amend your comments to say it's representing the interests of the city of Bastrop rather than the city of Nacogdoches?
Did I? Oh, I am so sorry. That's what I normally say in my previous life. Yes, Charlie Zeck represents the city of Bastrop in this agreement.
I feel so much better. Thank you.
Sarah, you were talking so fast.
And that's what I get for making notes. I normally like to go off the cusp, but this was such an important topic. I made notes, and that ends up screwing me up more than going from what's in my head. So I apologize.
You said Nacogdoches. I looked at Linda, and she just nodded. So
I was so enthralled in your presentation, I didn't hear you, so it was good.
Thank you for paying that careful of attention, Councilmember Nelson. That's appreciated, and you really did a good job. Councilmember Peterson, do you have a comment? Okay, any other discussion? All right, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Again, congratulations, Visit Bastrop. A lot of hours, a lot of hard work, and just wish you the best of luck. Go outdo every goal we set, and I would say kick, but I'm not supposed to talk like that when I'm up here, but do really, really good. Okay, we're on 9C, consider action to approve the first reading of resolution number R2017-69 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the expenditures of Bastrop Economic Development Corporation funds for the Technology Drive MLK infrastructure project in an amount exceeding $10,000, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and establishing an effective date and move to include on the September 26, 2017 agenda for second reading. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. The EDC Board of Directors approved an infrastructure project in the FY 17-18 budget. As part of that process of putting this in the budget, they have to do what's called a finding of fact resolution, in which the project complies with EDC law, and they did that at the last board meeting. Because of the type of project that it is, and it's in excess of $10,000, the project comes to the City Council to approve the project in itself. And so we've gone through the park and done a hydrology modeling and an analysis of site planning and engineering for the park. And one of the deficiencies that came to light in the park was there was a single ingress and egress route in and out of the park off of Jackson Street. In order to be in compliance with the City of Bastrop subdivision regulations, the park needs a second ingress and egress route in order to be able to come and go from the park. So the board approved a $1.6 million project to extend Technology Drive to MLK, as well as a water line and wastewater extension. And as part of a second project, this is actually the hydrology map. You'll see the little blue circle there. If we can find a pointer. The little blue circle here, as part of a separate project related to this lot, the board is going to be considering in the coming months constructing a stormwater detention pond. This pond is not needed at the moment, but as this lot develops, it will be needed to control the flows of water coming down and going into Gills Branch. As part of the hydrology modeling, the original pond location was at the northern end of what we refer to as lot A1? No, that's not A1, A8, excuse me. And we've moved it to this location because what it allows us to do in the hydrology model is actually flow the water off on this lower lot into Gills Branch and get it into the Colorado River faster than the upstream water actually gets to Gills Branch at that location. And by putting it at this location, we're able to detain all this water upstream and release it at a flow rate equal to what it would be any other time. So the final project that y'all are actually considering tonight is actually, this is the project for $1.6 million. It is extending Technology to MLK. It is looping the water line from here on South Street at the jail down to Technology into the existing water line, and then the manhole here extending it up to where South Street would come through, as well as the dry utilities for BP&L to be able to provide electrical service in that region underground. And so it's a $1.6 million project, and we are here seeking approval of this resolution.
Councilman, I'm sorry.
Oh, and this is the site that Granite and Stone, the southern site on this lot, is going on.
Councilmember Ennis?
So you're not only putting in the drainage, but you're putting in the thoroughfare too. You're extending.
We're building the ingress and egress with this project. The drainage will be coming back as part of another project that we're in the planning stages for.
Great.
We just wanted to make sure that y'all knew that we hadn't forgotten about it, that it is going to be coming back as part of another project.
Okay.
And we're planning on running both projects simultaneously.
Get a better price. Any other questions for Mr. Kirkpatrick? I'm happy to take a motion.
I make a motion, we approve.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the project? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
9D. Consider action to approve resolution number R2017-70 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving an agreement for the provision of administrative services and shared services between the City of Bastrop and the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation, authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you. So, in EDC law and our relationship with the city, we can't receive anything for free from the city. We have to pay for the actual cost of services. And so for the last 2 budget years, we've been using what is an actual cost allocation model in which the city departments report to the finance department how many hours they spend. There's agreed upon rates for each one of those services, and they send us a bill. We went through and compiled those and did an analysis of it. And what it came out to be is it would be simpler, easier for us to pay for our services on a monthly basis and reimburse the city the actual cost, because it was very consistent across those 2 budget years. And for the services that we received from the finance department, human resources, IT, that came out to $18,000 annually. We have other services that are shared services that we receive from the city. in like IT internet access. We're on y'all's Wi-Fi. We have a wireless antenna that connects into the fiber network of the city. We're cost allocated, billed that directly outside of that $18,000. The benefits that we receive through human resources that are for individual employees are billed to us individually. And so those shared services are actually billed on an individual basis on our cost share of those. The other third part of this agreement is the annual audit. And so we have agreed to a methodology in which we'll reimburse the city plus the administrative expenses in the finance department conducting the audit. So depending upon how much time it takes the auditor is a direct reflection of the time that finance has to spend with the auditor. And so as that bill goes up or down, the amount we reimburse the city for the audit is covered by that cost allocation. And so in EDC law, anything that we do has to be in a contractual basis, a written contract. And this has been on our to-do list over the years that I've been here to clean up. And so we're here to the council to put this in a written form so that we're all in compliance and we all understand what rules that we're playing by, and that y'all are getting reimbursed for the services you provide on the best estimated actual that we can come up with. The finance director has reviewed this and agreed with the cost allocation methodology that we used, and it is here for your consideration.
I got a smile from Ms. Waldron, so that I know that she's agreeing with you and nodding yes, because that's important to all of us up here. Are there any questions of Mr. Kirkpatrick?
It will save them a tremendous amount of time from having to gather up how much time staff spent with us.
Yeah. Any questions? I'll take a motion.
Move to approve the resolution relative to the services agreement.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Ms. Waldron, for working with Mr. Kirkpatrick. Okay, we're on 9E. I'm going to read what we're talking about, and then I'll open the public hearing after Ms. Land has an opportunity to go over her presentation. We're going to hold a public hearing and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-24 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, changing the name of 3 roads in Tahitian Village due to emergency response concerns, being Highway Court to Ori Court, Coco Lane to Nani Lane, and Lay Court to Riva Court, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, providing a severability clause, establishing an effective date, and move to include on the September 26th agenda for a second reading. Ms. Land.
Thank you, everyone. All right, so this is an ordinance for the renaming of 3 roads within Tahitian Village. All right, the history on this project. In 2015, there were reports of delayed emergency response times due to road names being identified as duplicate road names. The Commissioners Court established the Tahitian Village Road Renaming Committee, and they received public input. They proposed some names, they allowed public input for other names, and they reconvened in 2016 with a public hearing to rename the street names outside of the city limits. Okay, that did pass. Those names were changed. The roads within the city limits were never changed. Current city staff, as you know, the planning department has had some turnover. Current city staff was notified of the issue by Bastrop County, and we are here today to change those names. All right, the main issue, these 3 roads have duplicate or similar sounding road names, and those can cause delayed emergency response times. Hawaii Court and Hawaii Lane, very similar, especially when you get that 911 call that says, I'm at 103 Hawaii. Well, which road are you talking about? Coco Lane and Coco Court, very similar. Lay Court, Lee or Lay Court, I'm not even sure how to pronounce L-E-I, and West Lay Court, all very similar, okay? The other issue is that these roads are not located anywhere near their duplicate named road. So the 3 roads in red, get the laser pointer here. Okay, so these three are the three proposed to change, and the roads highlighted in blue, here, 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 and over here, are where the roads by the same name or similar sounding name are located. So you can tell they're not close to each other at all, causes confusion with emergency responders.
Anybody with a packet, if you'll look at page 132, that's a lot better picture.
Yes.
Keep going.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so this is the proposed names. So Hawea Court, proposed change is Ori Court. Lay Court is proposed to change to Riva Court, and Coco Lane is proposed to change to Nani Lane. All right. We do have authority to change these names by ordinance through the Capital Area Council of Governments, CAPCOG. We practice their addressing guidelines, which does include road renaming principles. One of those #1 guidelines is do not have duplicate road names or similar sounding road names. We also have a line in our Code of Ordinances that says the exact same thing. All right. This image shows August 2017 imagery thanks to Google Earth Pro. We can see Hawea Court has 4 houses on it, Lay Court has 1 house, and Coco Lane does not have any houses. Coco Lane is actually just a connector street, and it's not even paved at the moment. So no houses actually front on that street. And that is important because we have very few addresses to change. But as we move forward, we will make sure that all of those property owners are notified of the address changes, who's been notified, who they are responsible for notifying. I will also coordinate with Bastrop County GIS and emergency service providers, coordinate with Public Works for street signage with the correct name. All of this needs to happen pretty much at the same time or as close as possible so that we don't have any confusion with any call-ins with someone using an old street name or a new street name before it's in the system.
Would you add Google Maps to that list?
Yes.
In a previous city, it was not changed, and UPS could never find the homeowners.
Absolutely. I will notify both Google Maps and Apple Maps.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Council, any questions for Ms. Lamb before we open the public hearing? Okay, I am opening the public hearing, and I have one person, Vicki Frierson, I apologize.
I live in Hawea Court, and there are 5 houses on that. And it is an inconvenience for me to have mine changed. I have never had a problem with getting response. My security system goes off quite regularly, unfortunately, and the police respond adequately for me. But it is an inconvenience simply because it would take me a lot, like going to court and having my checks that I get change the address. That is something that I consider that was not. You know, nobody came and discussed it with me. I've lived there for 30 years. And I don't appreciate my name and my street being changed at this point. And I would like, if you really want to change one, why not try changing the other street? Or asking the neighbors if they really want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frierson. Ms. Lane, do you have any comments?
If you would like, I could research why we chose that street as opposed to the other. I do know that they tried to take as minimal impact as possible when they were picking which street of the duplicates to rename. And we could look further into that if you would like. But, yes.
I don't have anyone else signed up to speak, Madam Secretary. Okay, I'm closing the public hearing. Council, what's your pleasure on this item?
Before you answer, can Allison or Wesley or Dave discuss the impact if this is tabled to do some additional research?
I don't know that there's any problem to table it to another meeting so that we can do some more research to know why we picked this road name. And
if you will table it with a date certain, I don't believe we have to re-advertise.
I believe that's true.
But because you've held the public hearing.
Would you like to table it till the 26th, or would you like to wait till the first meeting in October?
My preference would be the first meeting in October, and that gives us time to go back to Bastrop County, which is where this originated from, as well as work with the residents.
And I believe the October meeting, should anyone be wanting to make a motion, is October 10th.
I move we table it to the October 10th meeting so some of these concerns can be addressed and a little bit more investigation done.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
It is 8 o'clock. We're an hour and a half in, and we are going to take a 5-minute recess. All right, it's 8:06, and we're going to go back in session. We're at 9F. Consider action to approve resolution number R2017-71 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the preliminary plat known as the Colony 1A, Section 2, being 23.689 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bangs survey, located west of FM 969 and north of the future extension of Sam Houston Drive within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, repealing all conflicting resolutions and establishing an effective date. Mr. Brandon.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This request is for a preliminary plat that's within the Colony Municipal Utility District, which is, a lot of us know, it's located kind of between Highway 969, which runs along the eastern boundary of the property, and it also takes access from Sam Houston Drive, which ties into Highway 71. It's not on the map, but it would be roughly down in this area. This preliminary plat is a little different than the other plats that we've looked at. The other development that's within the MUD has all occurred on the western side, and this section is actually way over on the eastern side. And it will include a new entrance off of FM 969, roughly a mile north of where 969 connects with Highway 71. So it's off of Blakey Lane, behind kind of where Lowe's is. And so this section is roughly 24 acres. They're proposing 88 lots that are single-family attached products. They'll be similar in product to what you would see at one of the newer sections of Pecan Park, where you have one building, but they both share or have a common property line, but they're on two separate lots. So some of the major things that we look at when we review subdivisions proposals like these, one is the lot size. We look to make sure that it meets all of the requirements of the standards that apply to a subdivision. In this case, the Colony has what's called a consent agreement with the city that defines the standards that apply to the development and how it can progress, and the requirements for how the infrastructure is built, as well as how the other property is developed. And so it's as I said before, it's in total 24 acres with 88 lots, with the remaining areas being left to open space and parkland and other landscaping areas. The main accesses will be provided off of an extension of Sam Houston Drive, which will tie into the other improvements that are proposed as part of Section 1, which has not started construction yet, but has gotten through the process to where they are almost ready to begin construction. So we anticipate a lot of this being done at the same time. There's 2 entrances off of Sam Houston Drive that all connect up to another access point that will provide access into future areas that are reserved for development. We also look at the utility systems, the water and the sewer and the drainage systems. The wastewater lines will all be gravity fed, that will flow to the south to a proposed lift station that's located kind of in the southwestern corner of the property. Flows will then be routed to an existing wastewater treatment plant that's owned and operated by the colony. They have a separate permit through the state that allows them to treat and discharge their own the wastewater from the project. The water lines will also tie into truck mains that are laid along Sam Houston Drive and be installed in a way that they provide a looped system, so that improves circulation and improves the ability to fight fires and provide redundant services to the residents. As far as the drainage system, the design's currently showing routing all flows through an underground storm sewer system that is then fed into Sam Houston Drive and routed eastward back across Highway 969 through the remaining property that the developer owns that's located between Highway 969 and the Colorado River. And so flows will be collected here and routed to the river through an underground piping system and channel system that will be installed down to the river. That is covering all of the highlights. This was heard at the last regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission on August 31st. The main topics that they discussed at the meeting had to do mainly with drainage. We did have a citizen that lives just north of the property that had some questions about how the drainage system would be designed. And we talked about how the flows from the site, as well as any flows that come from off-site, that drain from off-site of the property onto the property, must be contained and also routed through that underground system. So that there's no blocking of water, and so the neighbor's water will still be able to drain onto the property and be managed through that system. And they voted unanimously to recommend approval of the plat. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Brandon, for that presentation. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Brandon? I do have a citizen signed up to speak, David, and I believe it's Grassel. Grassel? I am not doing good tonight. Grassel. Mr. Grassel, I apologize.
I'm Dave Grassel, and I have lived in that area for over 25 years, and I'm not new to that, but what I am mostly concerned about is this particular company that is developing this land that's on the display board now. They just recently took over from another company called 4-Star, and they had a plat that looked very similar to this one that we have, and their plat did show there was going to be 5,000 homes put on this unusual shaped area there. And my concern is, although this says they're only developing 20 whatever acres, and that these sites for a building are like 34 feet, I'm thinking by the time there's 10 feet on this side for emergency vehicles and fires, and 10 on this side, which that is what Bastrop has, as far as I know, for requirements for emergencies. So each of these 34-foot lots is going to have 14 feet of width for them to build homes. I mean, unless I've missed something. But my main concern is after they put in these 21 acres or 26 acres, 23 acres, that they'll just keep doing more and more. And the problem is going to be 969 is a 2-lane farm to market road. And now that we have horrible traffic in Bastrop on Friday nights going east, on Sunday nights going west, and on Wednesday night everything is very busy as well. People use 969 to go back and forth to Austin when they didn't used to do that. Now it's very high traffic most of the time. It has a lot of school buses, loads of hay, loads of cattle, old people, whatever. There's all kinds of traffic on there. So by the time we get a couple of these little places built up in this development, we probably will have an awful lot of new cars, or not new cars, but additional cars using 969. And Brandon has said they are only set for 2,500 new homes. I personally believe that it's quite likely that each of the new homes is going to have a young couple or a young family and need 2 vehicles. So that would still be 5,000 vehicles using 969, which is a 2-lane road with all this traffic. I want to know what's going to happen if somebody that lives along there in any of those homes calls 911. If somebody has an emergency and calls 911, there is no way an emergency vehicle can get through the traffic that will be there then. I mean, I think 969 is going to have to be changed, and putting a turn lane in at the gate to that subdivision is not enough.
Thank you, Mr. Grisell. I appreciate your comments. Mr. Brandon, do you want to address any of those concerns?
Yes, ma'am. All very good questions. Speaking to the original land use plan that was approved with the consent agreement that was, this was back in 2003 when the original MUD was created, and with that consent agreement there was a map that did call out specific land uses, and it did allow for an extremely dense development. Over time and where we are today with that consent agreement is the total number of units in terms of utility demand, what we call living unit equivalents, are limited to 2,500 units. And so that's important because that's not only the number, the cap on the number of single-family dwellings that could be located on the property, but that's also included in the amount of commercial development that they could have on the property. The original land use plan, I believe, called for a little over 4,000 single-family units, and then also almost 500,000 square feet of retail space. So it was a fairly dense development for that acreage. Today, that limit is 2,500. And so that's still a reasonably dense development, and any changes to that would have to come back to council as a major amendment to the consent agreement for approval. As far as the traffic, there are many improvements that are included in the construction documents for not only this section, but the 2 sections located south of this project. It includes expanding Highway 969 in the areas that are necessary to accommodate turn lanes so that traffic is not crowding the streets and crowding through traffic that's trying to get around the development. They're currently working with TxDOT to get the permits necessary for that work, and they're also updating their traffic impact analysis to make sure that any other improvements in the future need to be addressed.
Would you also comment on the 34-foot lot lengths?
Oh, the 34-foot lot widths are not including any additional right-of-way and other access widths. I can zoom into a typical section. And so the way to think about it is take this pair of lots. You can see that the setback lines, which are these dashed lines along the perimeter of that pair of lots, define the building envelope for that single building that would be built in between the two lots. And then you would share a common property line. And so there would still be building separation between the buildings, but then you would also have, of course, the standard roadway width and right-of-way width that would typically be used for emergency services.
Council, do you have any other questions for Mr. Brandon?
Mr. Brandon, when was the traffic impact analysis done?
The original was done in 2005, and it's since been updated, and it's being updated again to reflect all of the improvements along the TxDOT right-of-way and in Highway 969.
Does the TIA also provide any information relative to the impact on the arterial roadways or the 71 corridor?
That's exactly what it speaks to.
Okay.
The way a traffic impact analysis typically works is they run an analysis on the existing condition. They look at the amount of traffic that road is carrying at the present time. And then they also then look at the amount of traffic that's assumed or anticipated to be generated as the development progresses. For instance, the typical calculation for a single-family lot is roughly 10 trips per day. And so they assume a certain development schedule and quantify those traffic impacts as that schedule progresses on the downstream roadway sections. In this case, it would be Highway 969. You would also look at the adjacent roadways that would take access from ultimately Highway 71, and they would study where the driveway locations are and where they are in relation to the other intersections to quantify the overall impact. And then the third step is determining what improvements are necessary to maintain an adequate, what we call a level of service along those roadways. And so that helps us identify the improvements that are necessary to make sure that the roadway continues to function in an appropriate manner. And so that's pretty much how traffic impact analysis work. They're updated from time to time. As I said before, the original TIA was completed in 2005. Luckily, the amount of development that we've seen since 2005 hasn't been enough to really generate a lot of additional traffic issues. But now that we're coming off of a new roadway, they're proposing some improvements on 969 to address those impacts.
So, Mr. Brandon, what we have before us tonight is a preliminary plat. It's my understanding they're not asking for any variances, and they're in compliance with all of the required subdivisions.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Mr. Brandon?
Yes, Mr. Brandon. Is there any way we can look at the updated traffic analysis before we take an action on this?
We can. I think the original traffic impact analysis speaks to a lot of the improvements that are proposed at this time. And the updated TIA is, we don't really expect it to have a lot of changes. In fact, I could probably we have Doug Rummel with Carson Briggs and Deering. Could you speak a little bit about the traffic impact analysis and the improvements that are proposed along 969?
Hi, my name is Doug Rummel. I'm with Carlson Briggs and Deering. Currently, we have produced a traffic impact analysis. It's with TxDOT right now, being reviewed. What we have found so far hasn't really changed the makeup of the traffic that we'll be seeing. We are going to have to add a turn lane, a couple right-hand turn lanes, left-hand turn movement, but nothing dramatic to change what was originally done in 2005.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
But Mr. Brown, I do see this is a preliminary, so we will be seeing this again, so we can take the appropriate action then.
That's correct. I should have said that before. The next steps after this would be the final plat, which would then provide all of the construction documents that would detail those improvements in accordance with that traffic impact analysis. So you will see this again, and these are somewhat off-site improvements because they're outside of the limits of this section. They're actually proposed as part of the Section 1 that was approved almost 2 years ago. And so, yes, you will see that again, and it will be in a format that will detail those improvements much more clearly.
Okay, thanks.
And they'll be handled in coordination with TxDOT.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes,
these
ma'am.
are not county roads. These are not
That is
city roads. These are
this
is TxDOT.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Be happy to take a motion.
I'll move for approval of the preliminary plat.
I have a motion.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brandon. All right, we're on 9G, consider action to approve resolution number 2017-72 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving preliminary plat known as Pecan Park, Section 6B, being 14 acres out of the Mosé-Roseau Survey Abstract 56, located south of the extension of Childers Drive within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, repealing all conflicting resolutions and establishing an effective date. Mr. Brandon.
Sorry, y'all are having to listen to me so much tonight. This is another preliminary plat for the newest section of Pecan Park, which is, of course, located within our city limits. This section is located south of the previous two sections that were just completed, and we've started issuing building permits within sections, what we're calling Section 3A, as well as Section 6A. And so the plat before you tonight is for Section 6B, which would be a continuation of Childers Drive to the south, and then also would provide an extension of, I believe it's Rimrock Court, into Section 6B to provide good two-way access as well as good circulation within the rest of the development. The overall development's calling for 47 lots. These are a detached product, unlike the plat that you just saw. These will be individual buildings on individual lots. It's on roughly 14 acres of land, and it's made up of the lots as well as some common areas. There's also the proposed trail system that's planned for the overall Pecan Park development that's anticipated to be built along the southern boundary of the section. We've reviewed the preliminary plat and found that it meets all of our statutory requirements as far as streets, utilities, and other drainage concerns. The proposed sanitary sewer system or the wastewater system will drain through the existing Section 6A and tie into the existing lift station that's located kind of on the eastern side of the development. The water lines will be extended to provide another loop system between all of these sections to make sure that firefighting capabilities and water circulation are provided in an adequate manner. And then past that, the site will have to be developed according to our standard subdivision regulations. This plat was also heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their August 31st meeting. They voted to recommend approval of the plat unanimously. So if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer it. We have representatives from the developer here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brandon. Mr. Ennis?
Is this the same kind of product that's in the original section?
It's a similar product. I believe the lot sizes are a tad narrower, but I believe the overall layout and design of that section is very similar to the previous Section 5A and Section 5B, which are the first sections that were built. They're kind of on the left side as you pull into the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
These are 60-foot lots,
Yes.
right? I mean, this is
Yes.
pretty good size lot. Any other questions for Mr. Brandon?
I'm sorry, these are a minimum 50-foot wide lots.
The original was 60?
The original was 60, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the map says 60 on what you've got the red around.
Oh, I think this was one of their older lotting studies. The layout's roughly the same, but the plat itself is calling for the 50-foot wide
Okay.
lots. I apologize for that. I thought it had been updated.
But it matches what they've come and said they were going to do. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The plan
There's not a
development-
change to the plan development?
No, ma'am. The plan development calls for various types of land uses, and there's percentages that those uses can take up within the property, and this meets those percentages.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Brandon.
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. We're now on 9H. Hold public hearing and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-23 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances Appendix A related to Chapter 3 titled Building Regulations, Chapter 10 titled Subdivisions, Chapter 14 titled Zoning, and the articles within Chapter 10, Section 8 titled Reservations, references within Chapter 3 titled Building Regulations, Chapter 10 titled Subdivisions, and Chapter 14 titled Zoning related to fees, and deleting Section 10.03.003 titled Subdivision and Development Escrow Fees in its entirety, providing a repealing clause, providing a severability clause, providing a savings clause, and providing for an effective date, and move to include on the September 26, 2017 agenda for a second reading. Mr. Brandon.
You should have seen the other caption we could have put on there. It was a lot longer. Mayor, Council, appreciate the opportunity to talk about our fees tonight. This is a continuation of the discussion we had at our budget workshop meeting last June. I've included the same slides from that meeting in your staff report, and so we're here to actually request or recommend that you approve amending the ordinances that currently define our fee structure. We're looking at updating our building regulation fees that apply to the plan reviews and the inspections and other work that we do to coordinate the actual building on properties. We're also looking at our subdivision regulation fees that apply to the work that we do to coordinate the preliminary plats and the construction plans and the final plats that you see when it comes to the actual infrastructure that's built to support that development. We're also looking at the fees that we charge for rezoning applications, plan development applications, and other zoning related items. The reason we're recommending that we update the fees is for one reason, the fees haven't been updated since 1995, so they're well over 20 years old. They're based on a code that's now defunct and not used anymore. We currently use codes that are from 2009. We use the 2009 International Building Code, and we also use the 2011 electric code, National Electric Code. We're also setting the new fee structure up to be based on an industry standard methodology to calculate the value of projects. Today, we simply use the declared value that's given to us by the applicant. This would create a system that would allow us to use what the International Code Council publishes once or twice a year, and it's called the Building Valuation Data, which provides industry standard cost per square foot estimates on the value of different types of development projects. And so that will allow us a very objective way to calculate the value of projects, which can just make our fee structure more appropriate. The fee structure that we've proposed has been reviewed by the Construction Standards Board as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission. Both came with recommendations from those bodies that we update our fees. And then we've also, at the budget meeting, we talked about the different services that our department provides and the costs related to those services, and there's a huge gap between the revenue that we currently bring in and the expenses that we have to provide those services. Currently, our services are creating a cost that's subsidized by, because this is a general fund department, these fees are subsidizing our department by roughly $234,000 a year, which is equivalent to 3 cents of our tax rate. And so these fees would help offset that subsidy and continue or create a system that allows these developments to start paying for themselves a little more.
So, Mr. Brandon, it appears to me that you're trying to balance being competitive. I think if you go back to charts, we can see how things compare with other cities in the area, or perhaps cities, better stated, cities our size, and to be competitive, but to not have our existing citizens bear the burden of new development.
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
And Mayor and Council, by approving this evening, you will be in compliance with your financial policies that specify that cost of service for these types of services be covered by the fees that are assessed.
Council, any questions for Mr. Brandon? Just for the general public, as he mentioned, it's been through 2 boards. We've talked about it extensively in the budget workshop. I don't want anyone to think that we're making the decision lightly. It's been discussed quite a bit, and this is kind of a culmination of a lot of work. Mr. Brandon, you and your organization, I appreciate that. I'm happy to take a motion.
I move.
Public hearing.
I have to open a public hearing. Do I have anyone signed up to speak? And I have now closing the public hearing. And thank you, Mr. Brandon, for keeping me legal. Now I would like to take a motion.
Yes, ma'am. I move for approval and first reading of ordinance number 2017-22 of the City Council in the City of Bastrop, and I'd like to move to include on the September 26, 2017 agenda for a second reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
And that's the last you have to do.
Bye, Mr. Brandon. Okay, we're on 9I. We're on the bottom of page 3. Hold a public hearing, and I really will do it before this time. And consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-22 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, adopting a budget for the fiscal year 2017-2018, October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018, providing that expenditures for said fiscal year be made in accordance with said budget, providing a severability clause, establishing an effective date, and move to include on the September 26, 2017 agenda for a second reading. Good evening, Ms. Waldron. She can present and then we'll have the public hearing. Is that okay? All righty. It's all yours, Ms. Waldron.
Good evening. So just to highlight, we are holding the public hearing. It is a requirement of our city charter. We have had multiple workshops on this budget, June 29th, July 20th, and August 14th. And the proposed budget document has been out there since August 8th. This budget will raise more revenue from property taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $252,465, which is a 5.6% increase from last year's budget. The property tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax roll is $102,355. This is, I tried to make it as big as possible. I know it's still kind of small, but this is just a snapshot of our major funds and the totals, and I just want to highlight the changes that have occurred since the proposed document was presented. The main change has been that we did take the drainage fund out because we are going to push that back to October. We'll come back with that one. So the majority of the service fee change is that fund being taken out. Another change was at your August 14th workshop, y'all discussed some community support issues, and we did add a few organizations to that funding, so that change is also in here. You have any questions for me?
Again, we've had multiple meetings.
Yes.
There's lots of paper. It's in the backup. We've spent hours and hours on this. Nothing compared to what Ms. Waldron and her team have done. Are there any questions for Ms. Waldron? Any comments, City Manager? All right. I'm happy to take a motion. Well, I'll open the public hearing. I even remembered. I'm opening the public hearing. Do I have anyone signed up to speak? So I am closing the public hearing, and now I'm happy to take a motion.
Mayor, this represents, like you said, immeasurable amount of hours on behalf of the city manager and Ms. Waldron and the staff, and I think it's our first step into the future. There's been an immense amount of planning undertaken on this budget, and I'm very pleased to make the motion to approve it.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Again, as Councilmember Ennis spoke, Ms. Waldron, for you and your whole team, and City Manager Humboldt, your entire team, I know, has been involved in this, not to mention the number of hours that you've put in. And it's, I think Mayor Pro Tem Schiff, when you made the original presentation, said it was the most well thought out budget he had ever seen. And we're very, very grateful for all the hard work. Thank you very, very much. Okay, we're on 9J. Hold public hearing and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-25 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop adopting the tax rate and levying ad valorem taxes for the fiscal year 2017-2018 to provide revenue for the payment of current expenditures, providing a severability clause, establishing an effective date, and move to include on the September 26, 2017 agenda for a second reading. Ms. Waldron.
Yeah, so this is the second public hearing of 2 required public hearings by state law. And that is because our proposed tax rate is over the lower of the effective tax rate or the rollback rate. So we're proposing a tax rate of 0.5640.
Thank you, and you might remind everyone of the $221,000, how much of that is new property?
Yes, it was $102,000.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Waldron? I'm opening the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up to speak?
No, Mayor.
I'm closing the public hearing. I'll be happy to take a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.5640, which effectively is a 5.2% increase in the tax rate.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Ms. Waldron. All right, we have no items posted for executive session, and since Mayor Pro Tem Schiff is not here, someone can have the honors of making the motion to adjourn.
Move for adjournment.
I have a motion and a second. By acclamation, we're adjourned at 8:45. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.